Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. Why focus on just one business? All right, let's go ahead and get the elephant out of the room. I know I'm wearing red, not my normal black T-shirt. I know. Apparently, red's my color. So I've been told that. So I'm busting this out today. All right. Why focus on just one business? Let's get it right into it. I have worked with a lot of different types of business owners who call themselves serial entrepreneurs, and they wear that serial entrepreneur moniker like a badge of honor. And I did too. And to be honest and to be fair, I do have several businesses. Here's the thing though, I am not the owner operator of several businesses. I have systems in place to run my property management business, my rental business, which runs through my property management business, and I have this business. And I have systems in place to help me keep all of those things and all those balls in the air. Now, when I had a lot more stuff going on, which when I was heading into 2023, things were massively more complicated. I was involved in several different SaaS businesses. One was a property management software system. One was it was an international. I'm not even sure how to describe it. Well, problem is if I can't describe it, it probably wasn't a good idea. But it was it connected international students with local colleges and people who are trying to provide housing for those international students. So, long story short, I was doing a lot of other things that really weren't moving me towards my personal vision. When I stopped and pressed pause for just a moment and I looked at what I really wanted in my life, I really thought I had to get really honest with myself and saying, you know what, that's not in line with my personal vision. I'm out. So I did. At the end of 2022, I had to have some awkward conversations with some folks who I had partnered up with in business, and I was like, guys and gals, I just this doesn't align with what I want to do. And they all understood. They were very understanding folks, and they get it. But they, and they've gone on to. I'm not even really sure if those businesses are even around anymore, to be honest with you. But the point is that I withdrew my activity because in the beginning it was that lie that I was telling myself, and maybe this resonates with you, maybe it doesn't, but the lie that I was telling myself was, well, it's only going to take a couple of hours, right? It's only going to take me a couple of hours. I only have to do this and I only have to do that, and even though there was no revenues, or the revenues were pretty low, the opportunity for it to be something big is really possible. And I thought, this just doesn't it even if this was a diamond in the rough, it's just not what it is that I want to do. So when I got really honest with myself about the types of activities that I wanted to be involved in, and the things that I wanted to be known for, the mental real estate that I wanted to take up of other folks, it had nothing to do with being involved in a SaaS business or an international connection of students and all this other stuff. Like it didn't match up with that at all. So going into 2023, and of course, it was kind of funny because after I pulled all that stuff into neutral, it was about 6 weeks later that we found out we were pregnant with our youngest daughter. And I was like 49 years old. I'm like, wow, okay, we're pregnant. And we had at the time a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old. And we're like, all right, so this is life now, right? Which was pretty cool. And that was very much in alignment with our vision, was having another child. And we'd been trying for a while. But that was something that was very much in alignment with what we wanted as a family, and all of that other business activity absolutely was not. So it's interesting that life got busy for us in a really cool way, because now Lily is she's coming up on 2 years old here pretty quick. It was pretty neat to see that now that we're busy, if I was still wrapped up with all that other stuff, staying at work, having conversations late in the hour because we're going across multiple time zones, literally halfway across the world with other folks, trying to line up their Thursday morning with our Wednesday night or vice versa or whatever. It just didn't make any sense for us. So long story short, what's really worked out well for me is when I did focus on one very narrow thing. And it was interesting because as I went into 2023, I was also pulling Landlord Coach into neutral because I really didn't want to work with it wasn't that I didn't want to work with the with individual landlords anymore, but I wanted to niche up a little bit. I wanted to I wasn't able to use all the tools that I had in my toolbox because people just thought I was the landlord coach. People just thought I was the guy who could teach people how to run and manage their rental property businesses so much more effectively and efficiently. And I can do that. That's definitely something that I have honed over the years. But that was literally one tenth of what it was that I did that I could do because I had all these other skills. I had, leadership skills and management skills, and I love to teach. I have an accounting background, which teaching people accounting and that sort of stuff was 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 something that I could do. I had a skill set for that. And fundamentally, it was a conversation I had with a guy not that long ago where he was kind of asking what it is that I do. And I was just basically explaining to him that I'm a life and business strategist. I have this business strategic boardroom. I help elevate people. I help expand people. I help them transform and transcend, not just in their businesses, but in their personal lives as well. And he's like, oh, so you basically help people figure out what they want to be when they grow up. I was like, yeah, right. And he was a 50-year-old man himself. So it's kind of interesting that when I did focus on that going into 2023 and starting to figure out my new lead generation and starting figuring out my new sales process and starting to figure out even if there was a viable product there, that I made the most amount of money that I'd ever made in my life in 2023. Once I stopped focusing on all that other crap. Now, the interesting thing is you wouldn't know it from the outside looking in. Like, I still drive the same piece of crap. We did not change our household, where we lived or anything like that. I mean, we still live in a, pretty modest home. But the reason for that is because I want to get completely out of debt with my financial assets, with my rental properties and other things that make us money. What sense would it make to trade in my 2010 HHR that has 250,000 miles on it, that I drive 4 miles a day, back and forth to my, from my office here to my house? What would make sense to trade that in on to an $80,000 or $100,000 vehicle that I'd sit in the car for all of 12 minutes a day? That makes no sense. I would rather put that into assets that actually generate money for me and my family. So it does not align with our vision right now. Now, once my rental properties and things that make us money actually are completely paid off, yeah, then we can go out and live our vision the way that we want to live our vision, because that's being defined right now. So why focus on just one business? Well, there's some tactical reasons for that. I mean, not just strategic, which would be alignment with your vision. But it was interesting because when I stopped and thought about this for a while, because someone really did not, you could tell that they were just kind of going, oh yeah, that totally makes sense, but I'm not going to change my lifestyle. And these are individuals who own all sorts of different stuff. Assets across the board, which is they call themselves I'm in real estate, which means that they have a rental property, they do Airbnbs, they do short-term rentals, they do some flips, or maybe they own a string of coffee shops, maybe they own some Burger Kings, whatever it is. They've got all these different assets, and I'm thinking, man, how busy are you? Do you own these businesses or do they own you? How much time do you have to spend wandering between one and the other? And of course, everyone loves to go to the Richard Branson example. Richard Branson, he is the CEO and owner of Virgin Brands, which has cruise ships and airliners and records and all these different things that make money. But Richard Branson can't even read a balance sheet. He can't even read an income statement, and he doesn't have to. You know why? Because he has people that do that for him. He's surrounded himself with the right tribe, with the right group of people that know how to do that stuff for him, because he, as the visionary, knows how to gather those folks. Like, that's a skill set of his. So rather than trying to figure out, this goes back to the book Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy, that when you start to think about when an opportunity comes along, rather than think of how can I make this happen, start to think instead of who can I partner with, who can I bring into my circle to make that happen for me, right? It's just a shift of a mindset. But This is why it's so much easier that if you're focusing on just one business at a time, get that thing up and running and then go on to your next endeavor. Once that thing is up and running and you're managing just the metrics and you're having your managers or your general manager and your supervisors reporting just the metrics, now you're managing by metric. It still needs some attention, right? It still needs some direction from you, the visionary leader, right? Like I hear this phrase mailbox money all the time, and I'm like, man, there's no asset out there that is truly, that just can be completely ignored, that you never have to have someone at least pay attention to, right? Richard Branson still, I promise you, goes to board meetings. He still pays attention to his advisors and pays attention to certain things because he has to. These things just can't operate on their own without any sort of involvement. They just doesn't occur because there's always attrition. There's always breakdown in any given system. So why focus on just one business? Because when you build one bridge at a time, you're going to learn what it takes to make that bridge successful, to make that bridge stand the test of time, where, okay, you built this bridge, now you're going to walk back across the bridge and use that same knowledge to build your next bridge. And when you have that, when you're able to do that, now you have someone that you pay to maintain the bridge, right? Now you can go on to your next bridge, because every bridge, every business, everything needs some sort of maintenance. So I will tell you that when I did shift this, and again, it's interesting because I coach on this stuff and I was still not doing it. I was still like, oh yeah, well that's good for them, but it's good for me to have 7 different businesses that I'm trying to be the owner operator of, and all these different other activities, and this podcast thing that I was doing for someone else, and this other, like, in sourcing all these guests. I mean, I loved it, but it was not in alignment with my vision. It was not in alignment with what I was actually trying to do. So I know some of you are going to probably, if you've made it all the way through this video, you're like, I don't know, maybe he's got something to say. Maybe there's some credibility to this. And some of you are still kind of shaking your head like, but how do I walk all that back? Because this becomes this, and this feeds that, and this thing. Stop lying to yourself. Here's the one litmus test that absolutely positively has to stand the test of time for me. Every single business has to stand on its own. Every single one. Every single business must stand on its own. And if it cannot, then it has to go. Because there's no reason that, and I mean, when it stands on its own, I mean the revenues that come in are enough to sustain its operation where I don't have to continually put my input into it. If I do, it doesn't stand on its own. So that's really where I want you to just stop and think about this. If you have these entities that are not standing on their own, and let's say that you want to get into this other entity, but right now your fastest path to cash is the entity that you don't really enjoy, that you kind of want to get out of, well, stop and think about that for a second and say, you know what? Maybe I just finish this, get this thing up and running, get this thing running to where I don't have to be operating in it, and then I can go on to something separate, rather than trying to split your time and divide your time between 2, 3, 4, or 5 different businesses. Okay? One quick final thought, and the way that I define the businesses is by avatar, and meaning that if I have 2 different people that I'm trying to market to, then, for example, I will treat them as 2 different avatars. So in other words, let's say for argument's sake that I have a rental property business that I'm trying to grow. And if I have a rental property business that I'm trying to grow, I will treat that as 2 separate businesses. One is an acquisition business, the other is a management business. Because think about it this way. It's if I'm having a conversation with someone with a property I'm trying to rent to, it's a different conversation with someone whose property I'm trying to buy, right? Therefore, it's just 2 different avatars. It's 2 different lead generation sources. So I treat those as 2 separate businesses. And when you can do that, it starts to get really confusing just for everybody in general. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I was calling up to rent a place. I'm like, oh yeah, we handle that too. And all of a sudden it starts to get very confusing for your ideal avatar. And if you've never heard this phrase before, remember this. When it comes to sales, when it comes to marketing, the confused mind will always say no. If they show up on a website that's got too many choices and it's confusing and they don't know where to go, they're out. If your message is confusing and fragmented because you say, oh, I'm in real estate, and you've got 19 different things that you're doing in real estate, the confused mind will always say no, and they will say, I'm out. All right. That is all I have for you guys today. If you want to head over to markdolfini.com, this website is actually going to be redirected to strategicboardroom.com here pretty soon. So for those of you, if you're watching this video in the future and you are redirected to Strategic Boardroom, don't fret. That is actually by design. So, all right, guys, have a great rest of your day. See you guys next time.